After months of waiting, it's time to start milking my very first Dexter cow. And today I'm going to be building my milking toolkit to make trips to the barn a breeze. Hey friends, it's Barbara Sue at Kowalski Mountain and welcome back to the homestead. If you've been following our homesteading journey, you'll know that our heifer, Meg, had her very first calf on the day of the total eclipse. She's now officially a cow in her first freshening, and we're about 2 weeks in. Now baby Apollo is doing fantastic, and I've been working with Meg on her milk stanchion training. Now I think that we're ready and we're going to start milking her officially. Now we don't have a barn, and so every morning I'll need to take all of my milking supplies with me. I decided to make a milking toolkit that will have everything together that I'm going to need for our morning milking routine. And I thought I would put it together with you. Now, while I've grown up around goats and I've milked many goats, I've never milked a cow on a full-time basis. And so while I have been milking Meg a little bit, I milked out some colostrum, and every day I put her in the milk stanchion and I'd milk out just a little bit of milk just for her to kind of get the idea this is what we're doing here. But all of that milk I gave to the animals. I didn't wash her down. I didn't do any prep. And so it's going to be an experience as she has to learn how to stand for milking. Now I have been watching lots of videos on YouTube as well as reading the book Keeping a Family Cow. Now one of the most helpful videos I watched about a milking routine was done by Tessa at Little Lady Homestead, and I'll be sure to tag her in the description box below. She gave a very thoughtful and well-organized video all about a milking routine, and I really appreciated her insight. Now, some of the things that she suggested are some of the things I'm going to be doing. Now, one of the first things I'm going to add to my toolkit is a brush. Now, Meg has got a furry udder. It's been cold here in Kentucky, and so she has fur on her udder, and it's pretty loose right now because she's shedding. So I do have a brush so I can give her kind of a quick brush on her legs and around her udder. So that's going to go into my tote. Now the next thing I have is a bucket, and this is actually a food grade bucket. This had my wheat berries in it, and I actually put my name on it. I don't know about at your house, but a good bucket gets snatched up, and then when you go to use it, it's disappeared. So I put my name on this bucket so that would not happen. Now, one thing I really like about this bucket is it has a cover, and that's going to be really helpful because we don't have water in the barn. I'm going to have to take hot water with me to be able to wash Meg. When it comes to washing a cow's udder or a goat, you're going to use soap, and people use all kinds of things. Trust me, I watched a lot of videos and people use a lot of different things. A lot of people just use dish soap, like Dawn. And then the other popular choice was Castile soap. Now I actually bought this Castile soap probably 2 years ago. I actually bought it. This is peppermint Castile soap, and I bought it to spray on the garden. And since it's going to be well diluted, I don't think it's going to matter that it's going to be peppermint, but I'm going to use this Castile soap because it's something I already had. In the morning, before I go out to milk, I'll put a little bit of soap in my bucket along with hot water, and also I'm going to stick in the initial rags I need. One of the nice things about Philip and I combining our two households is we've got towels galore. We have 2 households worth of towels. So first thing in the morning that will go into my bucket, I have a couple different sizes. I have dish towels, and then I have washcloths, and I will put in at least 3 towels into the bucket to start with. 2 of them are going to be reserved for Meg, and then 1 will be for me to wash my own hands. So my routine is going to be that I'll take 1 towel and I will wash Meg's initial udder and get all that grimy dirt and mud and hair and all that stuff off with this one rag. Now once a rag has touched Meg, it doesn't go back into the bucket. If I want to wet it again, I need to pour some of the water out, but never contaminating it with the rag. Then the next rag will be for another once over on Meg with a clean rag, just as a final touch up. And then the third rag in the bucket will be for me to wash my hands. Now on my way to the barn, I'm going to have touched the door handles and the gates and probably Apollo and Meg and all kinds of things. So I want to wash my hands before I officially start milking as well. Now some people wear gloves when they milk. I don't want to. So I think that just with good cleanliness and sanitation that I don't need to go to that extent. So to start off with in the morning, there'll be 3 rags in my bucket just for my start washing. Now after that, the next step will be to use teat dip. Now this is an iodine pre and post dip. Now one of the things I read about dips, most people use a dip cup. And the one thing that made a lot of sense to me about the dip cup was if you use one dip cup and your cow gets an infection in 1 quarter, because you're using that dip cup for all 4 quarters, you can transfer the infection from quarter to quarter. And then most people probably only have 1 dip cup and they use it on every cow. So theoretically, you could spread an infection through your whole herd. And while iodine is a disinfectant, hopefully it would help with any spread like that. Some people in the groups that I followed recommended a spray bottle instead of a dip cup. So I'm going to try the spray bottle. Now I'm going to be really honest and say Meg doesn't really like spray bottles because I use a spray bottle to spray them for flies, and they don't like to be sprayed with for flies. So if Meg does not like the spray bottle, I will switch to a dip cup. But I'm going to try the spray bottle first and just see how it goes. If I'm not satisfied with the results, I'll change to a dip cup. So one of my pet peeves is unlabeled bottles. So I am not going to do that. So I've labeled my iodine dip as such, and that is going to go into my bucket. Now this is going to stay in the house. This is not going to go out to the barn. Now, some of the other things that need to go to the barn. I want to have a few extra towels just in case maybe I drop one. Maybe Meg is a really big mess and needs a little extra TLC with cleanup. I'm going to keep extra towels in my bucket. And I'm going to need to figure out what to do with the dirty linens. Honestly, I'll probably toss them on the lid. I can almost guarantee it's not going to always look pretty like this, but I'm going to make it look pretty for today. Now the next thing that I'm going to add to my milking toolkit is bag balm. Now I grew up with bag balm. We use this for everything, for ourselves, not to mention for our animals. I did order some new for Meg, and this will be used on her udder. Tessa in the Little Lady Homestead, she puts just a little bit of this at the top of her cow's teats up near her bag to lubricate the udder. And I have to tell you, I have been using my tallow balm on Meg's udder as well, And that does make milking a lot easier. In all my years of milking, I never used any type of lotion or lubricant on goat's udders, but it actually makes it really nice. So this is going to go into my milking toolkit. I'm actually having fun rolling all these little towels, making this look fun. I'm actually very excited about milking. All right, so the next thing that I'm going to add to my milking toolkit is this little plastic bowl. Now, one of the things that you do before you start milking into your bucket is you need to strip the teats with a couple of squirts of milk. The milk is clean and in its perfect condition inside the cow. And the teats, the openings of the teats are the closest to the outside world. So if there's going to be any contamination of any of the milk in the udder, it's going to be that milk that's in the teats. So the first thing you do when you milk any animal is you squirt out a couple of squirts of milk. And you can also check it for mastitis. You can look for clumps, or maybe your milk is red. Maybe your cow has a lot of edema and she has some broken blood vessels in her udder, which would make her milk pink. You're going to see that in this bowl. Now, the other reason for doing it, that milk stripping into a bowl, is because I have a wooden milk stanchion. I don't want to be spraying milk all over my stanchion because my mat is not on it yet. So this will allow me to squirt that little bit of milk into this rather than onto the ground or onto the stanchion. So that's going to go into my milking toolkit. Now I have a few other things that are not going to fit in my toolkit, but they need to go to the barn with me. Now this is my bucket, and it's so cute, I have to tell you. Now I did go with this size bucket. This is an 8-inch stainless steel bucket. It is a seamless bucket, so I shouldn't have any problems with milk contamination with this bucket. Now the reason I went with a small bucket like this is actually like goat sized, is because I am milking a Dexter cow. Dexters at peak milk production, without nursing a calf, produce 1.5 to 2 gallons of milk. Now, this is not a gallon bucket, but one of the things that Tessa in Little Lady Homestead recommended was that when you get your bucket about 1/3 of the way full, that you pour it into your main milk container, which is here. Now, I love that idea. I am training a milk cow. Meg is on her first freshening, and she's going to have to learn how to stand still, and she's doing really good at not kicking. But when she's expected to stand when she's out of grain, she may not be as cooperative. So by dumping this bucket into my big pail, I will ensure that I don't lose all the milk if Meg were to kick over my bucket. Now at this point, I'm not even brave enough to just put the bucket on the ground and milk directly into it. I still hold it, which is not comfortable, but we'll get there. This is a process. So I have my little milk bucket that's so cute. And then I have my milk pail. Philip and I actually won this bucket in a raffle at Homesteaders of America in 2023. And at that time, when I won the bucket, I said I'm going to have to get a cow so I can put milk in it. And finally, I get to use it. Now this bucket is plenty large enough for us and our Dexter cows. Now for a full-size dairy cow, this would not be large enough, but for my purposes, this is going to be perfect. Now it also has a lid so that I can keep flies and bugs and everything else, cats, out of my milk bucket. Now I have a few other supplies that I'm going to be using for my milking routine that will not go to the barn with me. So the first are 1/2 gallon mason jars, and I bought some new ones so I would have enough. Mason jars are another thing that disappear around the homestead, and it's really hard to keep up with them. So I did buy some new ones, and I've washed my jars and I have them all ready for my first day of milking. Now, another thing that I bought, and I've been playing with this a little bit, so I will probably use a fresh one, is I also bought a strainer. Now, this strainer that I bought actually had an attachment on the bottom, and some of the user reviews said that the users would put in the milk filter and screw it together. Well, I could not get that to work. I could not screw those two pieces together with the milk filter in between, and I was pretty discouraged. But I went onto Facebook and I was looking in my dairy forums of what kind of strainers people used, and I got my solution. What a lot of people do is they take this milk filter, which that's what this is designed for, they push it in so that it's a little bit stuck down into the jar, and then they take the ring of the jar and they screw that on. That's going to secure the filter, and now I can filter my milk without making a mess. So I really appreciated that solution, and it solved the problem using exactly what I already had. Now, this idea I got from Kate at Venison for Dinner. Now, one of the things that she does when she's milking her cows, and she has multiple cows, is she uses a WetErase marker to mark her jars and her lids. Now, she milks multiple cows, and she chooses not to mix the milk between her cows. So she always labels her jar with the date and the name of the cow, or at least the initial of the cow. And she also marks the lid as well, so that she never mixes them up. This lid for that date always goes to this jar, and that prevents any cross-contamination. Now, I really liked her wisdom that if something is wrong with her milk, she will know exactly which cow that the problem comes from, and I thought that was wise. So I'm only milking one cow right now, so right now that's easy, but in the future, hopefully within the next month, we should have two, and I will likely do the same, not mixing the milk. Now, if you've never used a WetErase marker, it's exactly that. It only comes off with water. It's not a permanent marker, and it's not a dry erase marker. You have to wet a paper towel or whatever to get it to come off, and it'll stay there until it gets wet. Now, the only other thing that has not come in yet is my hydrogen peroxide. I'm a big fan of RuthAnn Zimmerman, and she talks about using food grade hydrogen peroxide to clean all of her dairy items, the jars and the buckets and those items, and I really liked that wisdom. She actually uses 35% hydrogen peroxide. I haven't been able to find it. She buys it locally, so it's not something that I can find. But I did find 6% food grade hydrogen peroxide from Azure Standard, so I'm going to add that to my next Azure order. And I will just spray the insides of my jars and my buckets as a means to sterilize them with a food safe product. Well, friends, I think I have it all. I think I have all that I need. I actually wanted this to be a much larger container. Like, I expected it to be really big, but I'm kind of thinking that this is the right size. It fit in everything that needs to go to the barn with me. And then I still have to carry the water bucket and the milk buckets and the milk pail, so I've got plenty of other things to carry. So this is probably the perfect size. Well, I'm really excited to start milking my very first dairy cow, and I hope that I've given you some insight about the tools of the trade that I'm going to be using in my milking routine. Friends, we really appreciate you watching, especially to the very end. If you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, hit that button. We'd love you to be a part of the Kowalski Mountain family. Friends, it's getting so exciting around here. This homesteading dream is really coming true, and we're taking you along for the good, the bad, and the ugly. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.